Okay.
Hi everybody. Hey, this is going to be really fun today to have as many of you all over the world. I do a lot better on my videos when I have an audience that I know you guys are watching me than I do when I'm just talking to a camera. So today we're going to be going over some tricks and tips on the Goodnight star. I'm going to show you how to do the strip piecing and talk a little bit about the cutting of the background. This quilt is really an easy quilt. The star's small and it's all done on paper piecing and strip piecing, and it can be done like one block group at a time, or you can sit down and stack all your block groups. But anyway, it's a really fun quilt to make. And I do have to say that I spent yesterday in the afternoon going through and I cut everything out and read the instructions, so hopefully I'll be able to remember and cover everything that I learned yesterday. And I do have to say that I believe the way the labels and everything on the kit are set up are really, really easy to follow your pattern. I also am going to go over and show you just a few things about if you're not using the tulip pink, where we use the yardage rather than the strips. Then I'm going to go through and tell you how to use the strips a little bit, and I'm going to show you how I actually read a pattern. So we're going to be skipping back and forth throughout the pattern, because even though I write the pattern as if you were going to sit down and start at the beginning, and when you get to the last part, that's when you're getting the instructions for how to cut out all of the border. I'm going to skip around and throughout the pattern to kind of show you some tips and tricks that I've used and learned over the years on how to organize stuff. So, okay, so let's get started. I have a bunch of this pre-cut already, but I'm still going to go through some of the cutting with you. And but where I want to start is actually I'm going to open up a new kit here. So if you guys purchase this kit or you're setting up your own fabrics, then you need to label your fabrics basically the same way that we've got this kit set up. Okay, now there's a couple things that I have a tendency to open up something like this and I just look at it and start thinking, oh, this goes here, this goes here, where does this go? And a lot of times I don't really look through the package. And when I don't do that, quite often I get caught and go, oh, I cut the wrong piece. And so it's easy for me to just go to the shelf and get new fabric. But for you guys, it's not. So I want to go through the kits just a little bit to show you how they're organized, okay? So we have our picture on the front, and it's pretty easy to read the picture. And if you don't know what fabrics, like there's fabric names on the back of the pattern, if you don't know what fabrics are what, you can actually search that out on the internet and it'll actually give you the name of the fabrics that we have used in here. Because we don't normally put the fabric color name in the pattern except on the back page, mostly because you have to, if you want to use your own, you have to be able to identify all of that information with the number system that we have set up. Judelle has something she wants to say.
Also, we have a color-coded kitting sheet on our website. So you go to the website, go to Goodnight Star, and you can scroll down and you can see a color-coded one that you can open up and save to your computer as a PDF, and it'll show you the fabric picture along with the name. So there you could see it all color-coded.
Okay.
And on the back of the pattern, there's actually a QR code down at the bottom. And that, if you scan that with your phone, flip it straight up, flip the pattern straight up.
Straight up,
yeah,
so you can see.
So you can see it better. You can
I'm
show
going
where
to point to it so you guys can see it.
So if you scan that with your phone, that'll take you right to the pattern page, and then you can easily find that color-coded information, and you can also find corrections and other general pattern information, digitized quilting designs, replacement papers, all sorts of information for it as well. So,
and let me tell you, that's probably a good idea, because when I opened this up, I just kind of sat there and looked at that and go, what is this? How do I know what everything is? Well, if I'd have gone out there, it would have been right in front of me, and I wouldn't have had to figure it out by myself, okay? But it's good for me to have to sit there and figure it out, because I know a lot of you guys do that. But if you can go out there and look up that information, it would have probably saved me 2 hours of trying to go through and figure out how this actually goes together. Now, it's not that I don't know what's in the pattern as much as it's following, because I know how to do this stuff and I don't need instructions, and I do much better to just lay it all out on the table and do what I want with it, and I know where it's going to go. But when you have to go back and read instructions and work your way through it, then you wonder, is it going to come together? Well, I'm going to guarantee you it comes together really nice. So what I learned yesterday was these labels right here are so valuable. If you don't have those labels, then you're going to get lost in the process, okay? And so what I did with my labels is I actually took the labels, because I don't need the whole strip. I cut about a 2.5 inch strip off of the ends of each one of the pieces that are in here. I stacked them all, and then I cut these off of them. And then I just took my labels and I put those labels right on the strip. And so then after I stacked all my fabric and did the cutting, I was able to go back, and when I got to this color, it told me exactly what pile to put it in. Because when I get to the end, I'm going to have an A color group, a B color group, a C color group, a D color group, and E and F. So, because you end up with 6 color groups. And by following the charts that are in the pattern, it put everything into a stack exactly where it needed to be. And that's what we're going to go over today, all right? So, don't set these labels off to the side and then try to figure out where they go back to. Cut that strip off and put your labels on it. And if you're doing your own fabric, you need to build these labels, and you need to do the same thing so that you know when you come out that your strips are going to come out, and build the sequence of color around your blocks, all right? So in this pattern, the other thing is you have to have a strip set, or basically we end up with 48 strips for this quilt. And in most of our strip piecing quilts, we use the 48 colors. In this one, because it's a different size, the way it's set up, you actually have to have 9 strips. And so if you're doing a strip set like this, you're going to have to get those other colors that it talks about in there to finish up this. So basically we have 6 strip sets, and then you're going to have 6 colors to go with each one of the colors that are in your strip set. And those are actually going to come in as one of the alternative colors. So you can actually set your quilt up. So this block right here would be like a purple block. This one would be a blue. This would be a gold. This might be a pink. But whatever strip you come up with, you probably want it to match the colors that you're working with in your strip set. Now, if you do your own colors and you want to just pick colors of your own, the best thing to do is, if you want to work with 48 colors, you need a 2.5 inch strip of every color, and you want them to go from light to dark. That's kind of the way the strip sets are set. So each one of these little groupings in here there's 8 colors, and the lightest one is number 1, and the darkest is number 8. In the instructions, that changes a little bit. It moves it all to the number 2 color, because that extra, those 6 extra colors you have to add to it to have 9 strips, that's going to be your number 1 color as you read through your instructions. So the strip sets work really good. If you use your own colors, you can go ahead. You can repeat colors like what we did here. We just cut the yardage, and then we're cutting the strips and using them 4 to 5 times throughout the pattern. Okay, so that kind of covers a little bit of the strip information for the strip set. All right, so I have all of my fabrics, and if you go through and look at your labels, you'll find that on the little tiny dots and the tiny stripes, you have to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strips. When you get down to the big dots, and we have 1, 2, 3, these are my 6 extra colors. So out of here, I'm going to get my 48 strips. Out of here, I'm going to get those other colors that it tells you need, which is the 6 other colors. On these, I only have 4 labels, okay? And I did the same thing. I cut the strips off, and I put those labels right onto the strips that I cut off, okay?
Actually, Mom, the big dots and the little dots make up the 48 strips, and then the big dots make up the extra one in the middle.
Oh, I gotcha. So some of them are...
Some of the 48 would be in the big dots.
Because they're all mixed up throughout it, and they're used in different places. And so, anyway, that's how those are set up, and you'll see that here in just a little bit. Okay, so the other thing that you're going to find in your bag is when we're building kits, and when you're going to find the same thing if you're purchasing a kit through a shop, we're limited. We have somewhere between 12 yards to 15 yards on a bolt, and it's not always the same. And so when you have a quilt that has to have 4 yards or 2.5 yards, what you do is you try to divide it up between all the yardages there. But we always have these leftover 1.5 yards, 3.5, and different things like that. And so what we try to do is we try to figure out the best measurement. And so when we have, sometimes when you get in your kits, you're going to have 2 different yardages. So this one is my black yardage, but I also have an extra strip here that we had to have different. And so you want to pay attention to that if you have 2 pieces of yardage, because like on my background, it told me I was supposed to cut 6 12-inch strips, and then I had to have 3 16-inch strips. Well, I didn't read any instructions. I didn't look at my labels. I just grabbed them and started cutting. Well, I ended up cutting 6 12-inch strips, but then they had the extra yardage in there for one of the 12-inch strips, so I was short fabric to get my third 16-inch. So pay attention to that. And anytime you get a kit, a lot of times when there's a large amount of yardage of one, they'll break that up into calculate, where your cuts need to be. And normally they'll put that in there. So read what the labels say and figure out what you need before you start just cutting into it like I do. I make that mistake all the time. I cut and then I read directions. And that's not the right way to do it. So make sure you follow your labels. Okay? And so those are the 2 backgrounds, and then you're also going to find your binding. Okay? And then the other thing you have in your pattern is your instructions, and you have your foundation sheets. And now that's where I'm going to actually start breaking off from what's in the kit, and I'm going to start telling you how I do this. Okay? So we're going to set this back aside, and we're going to get started. I'll never get that in there, so I'll just set it over here. All right, so in your papers, for your foundation papers, I've already sorted mine. Your instructions are going to tell you that you have to have 6 bags, and the reason for the 6 bags is you're going to end up with 6 strip sets, and you want to keep each one of those strip sets in a separate bag. Okay, so I have my bags set right here, and I'll just put them back in my little box here. And then this is the cutting instructions. So I got to find my... So one of the things that, when I set up the cutting instructions, I usually give you the cutting instructions for where you're going to start in your quilt. But when you're buying a kit, you need to kind of go through all of the information. And the best way to do your cutting is to start with the largest pieces and work back to the smallest one. And so figure out where your backgrounds are and look at what your measurements are for your backgrounds and make sure you get those cut and set aside before you start doing the small cuts. And the reason why is because if you cut all the small pieces first and then you go back, you get to the background pieces, the large amounts, what happens is if you do miscut, then now you just shorted yourself on those big pieces. And so the best thing is get all of that fabric sorted out, cut, set aside, and then come back and do the cutting for the smaller pieces as you're working through your instruction. And normally we set that information for the backing and that kind of stuff. Not the backing, but the large background pieces are normally towards the end of the pattern. So on page 5, it tells you how to cut out all of the background pieces that go behind these blocks that sew into the star. And then the big square pieces, you're going to have to go back to page 10. All right? So what you should do is get the yardage on page 10, cut off, and then go back and do the cutting for the rest. That way, if there is a mistake, there's probably a good chance you're going to be able to get one piece, or you'll have something there that you can probably work with to get that fixed. And if not, it's a lot easier to find a quarter of a yard or something from somebody than it is to find 8 yards of something. Okay, so I want you to go through and make sure that you get all of the fabrics for the big blocks cut first, and then come back and start in this area right here on page 5. All right, so let's just start just a little bit here in general information for those of you that are quite new to our patterns. Almost all of our patterns have the same general information. You should kind of thumb through it because sometimes we'll add something new to it that's specific for the pattern that we're working with. But like the general information normally has a little bit more information about what the product is that you just purchased, okay? Corrections. Basically that's the same everywhere, but the QR code will take you to the corrections now. That's one of the lovely things about our internet system, is that we can actually post those corrections once we find out that we have to make a correction to something. Paper piecing supplies, you can thumb through it, but over the years I've probably only added 2 or 3 items to the paper piecing, okay? The definition of common terms, normal, I don't think I've changed any of that in 20 years that I've been writing. General techniques, we've added a few new techniques that we list in here, and those are things that you learn when you take one of our classes or you're trying to teach yourself how to do it by reading through the instructions. We also have information in there that talks about the general fabric information. A good portion of people don't really understand that until they start doing our quilts more and more, and they start working with Quiltster, then all of a sudden everything that we put in there makes sense to them. Okay, Quiltster is a great tool. I used to have to do everything and calculate it out in my head, and the day that my son finished up that program and I put in all of the information, we colored it and it calculated everything, I never work with anything other than Quiltster because it gives me all of the information. And so when I want to, before I even cut out a quilt, I say, Judy, you need to print up the information for me, because I don't even want to open up the instructions and read through it. I just want to go through Quiltster and cut the way it tells me to cut in Quiltster, and because it's going to match up to my instructions. And that's the beauty of it, is it's all set there in front of you without a lot of verbiage, and all you have to do is get the strips cut, and then it matches right into your pattern. Okay. And so then we also have the general piecing instructions. So if you've done several of these patterns, this is stuff that you can just skim right over because you've already learned most of what's in there. So then we get into breaking it up into the different groups. And so on this one, we have what we call an A group, and that's your strip piecing part of it. And then you have the B group, which is actually the 12-inch blocks, and that's what was on page 10. Okay, so this is going to give you all of the cutting instructions right up front.
They're 16-inch blocks.
Oh, sorry, 16-inch blocks. 16 finished. They're cut 16 and a half. And it gives you a layout. So if you guys are designing your own quilt, you can actually, if you want, go in and take this star and blow it up and cut samples up and figure out where you want to put your fabrics. And then you'll know exactly what your number is. You won't even have to think about it. You can just take that picture right there at the bottom of your pattern and go do an exploded view on it on a copier, and then you can cut little fabric samples out and figure out how you want your colors to go. And then if you look back at the pattern, it's going to tell you which fabric is S1 and which one's S9, which one's S7, and you just match what the little samples are, and now you just created the whole quilt. So anyway, this is a valuable thing that you guys want to use. Something else I like to do is, once I figure out where all my yardage is going, I like to put fabric samples in my pattern right here on the pictures. You can put it right on the strips that we have, or you can set it up by the cutting instructions wherever you want. We have little boxes, but sometimes it's hard to tell what fabric it is. So if you lay it onto the strips, then you know you're not really covering up any verbiage. You're just covering up a graphic. Okay, so I like to get all of my fabrics in there. And then we're going to go to page 6, and on page 6 we have the layout. So if you look, we have color group A, color group B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, so this shows you how all of those are laid out, and if you actually start reading the numbers on those, it'll tell you exactly where your strips of fabric go on that. And I'm going to show you how I work that. This chart was set up in here so that you guys could actually create your own colorway. All right, and basically, if you look at your chart, we have what's called a red group, and then when you go back in the back part of the pattern, Judy actually tells you that the red group goes right here, 1, 2, 3. So that's where the red group goes. So then when you come in here, then it has the B group. Then you come back here, and the B group is what she called the orange group. And you look at your picture, and here's my orange right here, orange and orange and orange. Okay, so that's where how you find where your groups are going to actually set. So if you're wanting to do something like a rainbow version, or something that goes, we all have our own way to create color. that's how you would figure out where you wanted to put all of these colors in here. And that took me a little bit of time to figure out, well, how do I know what that is, until I finished reading through and I'm like, oh, she's got the picture right here and that tells me where all my color is. Okay, so reference your pictures there, right? And this, so that's what this is. And then you go through all of the strip piecing, and we're going to go through that in class. And then you get into the quilt assembly, and this quilt assembly is really nice. You're not going to end up with opposing seams on everything. It just doesn't work out mathematically. I tried really hard, but no matter what, because we're mixing, these blocks will all have opposing seams if you pay attention to it. But then when you start throwing in your big blocks, then you start messing up your opposing seam situation. So do the best you can in the pressing on there. And there is pressing information with the instructions. But if you don't like the way that it's working out, you could change it. It's just fine. And I think one of the things you have to think about with this quilt is, if where you're working with black and white fabrics, you're going to want to pay attention a little bit to the shadowing of the black and white. And so if you have to repress something because you think it's going to shadow, then just do it. Don't worry about whether or not it's going to follow your instructions. All right? Once you get past the assembly, then it also has a bunch of pressing instructions there. But if you've changed it, what I like to do when I start going through changing my pressing instructions, I'll actually come back and mark the areas in the blocks that I actually changed. So if I took this line and I decided I was going to repress that, then I just put a red, I'd take a red pen and I would mark the lines that I repressed so that I'd remember where I repressed. Okay. And then we get back to these two illustrations, and those are just telling you where all your fabrics go. For the quilt on the cover, Judelle actually gave you a chart on the back that has the name of all of the fabrics that you can actually go in, and I just took those labels and I matched S9 with A, and both of those numbers are on there, S9A. And so S9A was my yellow, S8A was this color, S7A was this color. So it's really easy to, once you have those labels onto your fabrics, you can just come in here and just put everything right on your chart, and you're going to be able to figure out exactly what pieces are going to go together for you. Okay? So in general, that's the way this quilt's going to go together. On the back, you have a fabric chart, and it's basically telling you on the back, when you look and read this across here, it has my pom-pom fabrics, and it says that my S2A pom-pom, or my S2A fabric, S4A, S3F, and S7F are all out of the poppy color, okay? And that's where all of that information is. So we know, that's how we know what labels. So when you get your fabric kits, it should, when you go to your poppy fabric, it should have all of those labels on there. So if you look at the labels on your pattern and match them up to the fabrics in here, you'll also know what the colors are. Okay, so all the way around, it's really put together nice as far as with the labels. Okay, so we're going to just kind of set that aside, and I want to quickly go over just some real simple information. And so it's so often when I'm teaching my classes, my students will come into class and they will have all of their papers cut out, but they're all cut out, just they'll take scissors and they just cut them all out, and they'll have a 1/2 inch, a 3/4 inch excess paper around there. And the first thing I tell them is you're going to have to retrim around there. So I want you guys to get yourself in the habit that when you're doing something like a T-template, that you're actually trimming them. When you cut them out, just cut them on the line. This is a T-template. because if you don't cut it on the line, you're going to have to come and cut it out again. And so you just wasted all of your cutting time up front, and you're going to redo it again on every individual piece. So when I have the whole pattern here, I can actually just go through and do all of the line cutting on this. Another tip I want to tell you is if I have a board and my paper keeps moving on me, I can take this repositionable glue and I can find areas where there's nothing, that I know that there's no paper under there, and I can lay that down and I can actually glue that paper, my newsprint, right to my table, and then it doesn't move on me, and I can just work my way around all my pieces like this. Okay, so as you guys are cutting out, don't leave all this excess around it. Cut them right on the line, and then you don't have to do it twice, and that'll probably save you 3 to 4 hours of always going back and doing the next trim on it. All right, so I'm going to finish cutting this one piece here. I'm going to cut my little smart corners, and then I'm not going to finish the rest because I already have some cut. So you guys should have 3 template sheets in your pattern. And so there's plenty of templates there. And then, actually, I'm just going to put that in there so I don't lose it. What I do, so I pre-cut all of my strips here. And I have my fabrics, okay. And in my instructions, I'm going to look at the picture, and it tells me that I need 2 T templates for B2R. So this is my B2R, so I need one right here, okay. And I'm just going to put a little bit of repositionable glue on there. And I want to make sure that I don't have, that my fabrics are stacked evenly. Because when you're working with some of these cottons, they have a pretty wide selvage on them. Okay, so I'm going to just put some glue on that. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit because I'm working with black fabric. All right, so we're going to start with the first piece, and it says my B2R goes over here. So I'm going to just place that like this. And then it tells me I need another B2R. Well, what I like to do is I can just flip this piece over like this, even though that's my left side, and I can look at that. And once I know what that size is, I can measure it. And so that strip tells me that that's a 9-inch. So I'm going to cut my strip at about 9 1/4 inches. And I can move this over just a little bit more. So I'm going to just cut my fabric right along the edge there. First of all, we're going to get rid of the selvage before we do that. All right. So now I'm going to add about 1/4 inch. And you have to lay it all out here before you do that to make sure this will work. So now I have that rectangle there. And then I have my B1R, which is going to be right here. And so I'm going to actually put it on this way. And then I'm going to take my B1L and flip it this way and make sure I've got them both on there, and I do. So then I'm going to just cut another chunk like this. And then we're going to take this one. Let's see, let's go ahead and put this one on here like this. And then we have our last piece that's going to go on here like this. Okay. So now I can actually take this, and I'm going to cut my salvage off. And I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to add just about a 1/16 of an inch along that edge. And then I'm going to flip this over and get those pieces stacked on top of my other one. And I don't like to cut it out right perfect if I don't have to. Now I've got all of my layers, and now I'm going to trim it down to exactly the size of the template. And we're going to grab some paper clips, if I still have any in here. I might have, here's some. And then I'm just going to put my paper clips along that edge. Okay. And now I'm going to take and cut the other edge. And then we're going to cut this one. Okay, so here's my smart corners, all right? So these patterns are actually set up to where they have smart corners, but the one thing you want to think about is they're actually you have the two pieces are a mirror image of each other. The one that says R, the one that says L is a mirror image. And this only has just a cut line like this, okay? And so if you pull the template off, you're going to forget which one's your left and right because they're exactly the same size. So leave the template on it when you're sewing it up. But another thing you can do is you could get a little ruler. It's called it's by Marty Michelle, and I was going to grab one to show you, but they're a really cool ruler. They actually have a double smart corner on them, and you can actually take those and lay them on there. And once you use that double smart corner, maybe Anna can remember what the name of the ruler is, and she can post it out there. And you can take that and you can cut both corners, and once you do that, now the pieces will fit either place, and you won't have an issue with your smart corners coming together when you're creating your patterns. So you may, if you haven't got one of those little rulers, they're a pretty cool ruler. All right, so I showed you how I do that. So basically I have all of my pieces here. We don't have to go through and cut them all, but I like to try to get it cut down into segments before I actually do that final cut on there. You have a TRP line on the ends of these. There's two TRP lines, and you look at them and you go, why are those there? Those are really important TRP lines for this particular pattern, because what they do is when you start assembling your quilt, they tell you where that point's going to land right there. So you don't end up with one star point up here and one star point down here. And it keeps it all together and squared up for you. So I like to just take, when I get my stack like this, I like to just come in here to my machine, and I'll just sew through all of those layers of fabric and with my thread, and I'm going to actually do this. I have a bigger stitch.
Anna says the deluxe corner trimmer, Mom.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So two things happen here because I did this. One is these fat papers are not going, I'm not going to lose the template, okay? When I get ready to actually start sewing those and I pull the threads out, if I'm working with batiks, I don't even have to sew a TRP line in there because I'm going to be able to see the holes. If I'm working with a cotton, I can come in here with my marker, chalk pencil, and I can just take that and draw a line right down that, and then I can open this up and I can draw another line and I can open it up and I can draw another line and I can mark the whole stack like that without having to remove that paper over and over. The techniques that are in the pattern don't cover this technique because it's just too hard to write the instructions on that. So we just have to make it a little bit simpler by telling you to actually go in and mark them. But that's the trick that we use is we come in here and we just lift these up. And now I have all of the marks on the back side, and it's also marking the front side as well. So you want to make sure that it's a chalk that's going to come off for you. All right. So that's the end of all of my border information. And we're going to put all of this stuff back in my bag. And we're going to start strip piecing. Okay. So I like to take my pattern and put it someplace where I don't misplace it over and over again. Now I have a quilt, so I really don't need it, but if you guys were at home, take it and glue it to your table or pin it someplace where you don't lose it because you're going to be referencing your cover sheet quite often. Okay, so I'm just going to put it right here. And we're going to go to page, let's start on page 4. So it has all of your sheets, and it tells you, if you look at the top of the second column, it tells you you need 6 bags. You need a bag that says A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, okay? And then A7 was one that you put all your templates in. Well, it says you need 2 foundation sheets for S1, S2, and S3. Well, here's a trick. You have 2 on this page of S1, 2 of S2, and 2 of S3 on this page. So you don't even have to cut this apart. I can actually do all of my samples right on this page as I'm going through all of the strip piecing. And then I can just put the full page in there, and when I'm ready to start doing that group, I'll just cut those out and I'll have the papers and I'll have all my samples right on it. So I have another one here that I have all the samples on, just so you can understand what I'm talking about. And you'll see where we're going with all of my sorting. But when you look at this page, before I cut it out, I have all of my references right here, and it tells me exactly what my numbers are. So if as I was going through my strips, each one of my strips have that number. So if I look at this says S1F right here, and so what I'm looking for is fabric S1. So that's my purple fabric, and this is fabric S1. So this row is the same, this row is the same, and this row is the same, okay? But because of the way we're building this, just go ahead and put a sample on each one of them, okay? When I look at the next one underneath there, that one says S2F, and so I'm gonna go find my fabric S2. This doesn't have the F on it because the F is actually my group number for my color group number, because this is my F group. And I have fabric S2. And then we have fabric S3, which goes here. And then we have fabric S4, which is here. Fabric S5 is this one. Fabric S6 is this row. And then we start back. Fabric S7 is this one. Fabric S8 is this one. And fabric S9 is this one. So mathematically, it just falls into order as you start working that, okay? And so I'm going to show you how I got to this point. We're going to put this back in here for now. And I have my strips in there. So that's something else. I'll just put those here because I want to show you. So I'm going to put this back in here because we're going to use that to do our demos with. So I already started sorting all of my groups, and I kept a couple strip sets. So if you look, I have an S7, or this is my A group right here. This is my B group. This is my C group, my D group, and my E group. And I've already completed the F group, which was the 6th group, okay? So we're gonna just take this and set these over here for now, all right? And I'm gonna finish cutting. I left a couple strips here to go through the cutting on. So remember I told you that you needed to put your labels on these pieces that you cut off, all right? So we have the labels. Do you see what I'm saying here? Now we're gonna set that aside here. And I already started cutting these strips, but I stacked all my strips. And then I just took my 2.5 inch ruler and I just started cutting them, okay? And they don't have to be perfectly cut because you're doing strip piecing, but you need to try to keep them somewhat, because you don't have a lot of extra fabric. I have extra fabric with this group, but the first group where I had to have the 5 cuts, I really only have about 1 inch left over of that fabric. So you got to be a little bit careful when you're doing the cutting this way. But this keeps everything stacked in the same order. So I kind of like this idea. So we're going to take this and I'm going to find my 2.5 inch mark on my strips, and I'm going to kind of lay it down a little bit here. So this is a 1, 2, 3 inch ruler. So I'm just going to start cutting, and I need 2 more strips. So I'm going to cut to there, and then I'm just going to kind of pull that off to the side. Okay. Now, if I had to do really accurate cutting, this is not an accurate way to do it. But for doing the strips, it works really good. So now I can just take this and lay it on there. And actually, I can go down far enough to finish that. And then, oops. Okay, so this is just some leftover. Okay. So now I have my strips setting here, and I'm going to start with the first stack. Actually, I can do both stacks at the same time. And this is the part that really was cool, that I was like, wow, this came out really cool. Judy did a good job when she put the instructions for this together. So I took this label right here, and my labels are losing their sticky, so I'm going to put a little sticky on it, more sticky on it, and I'm just going to put it right here. And both of these are just my E's because that's what I have left. And you're going to have a whole bunch of labels, and you just go through your stacks and you just pull those labels, and then when you're done, everything's in order. So both of these go with my E group. So I'm just going to pick up both pieces, and I'm going to fold them up. And I'm going to reach over here, and I'm going to find the E. We have the B. There's the E group. And I'm just going to fold them and put them right in there like that. And then I'm going to set that aside. And this one's going to go on this group. That's why I like to stack all of those fabrics, because now I'm just going down each strip at the same time, and if I had all my strips there, I'd just put a label on each one of them and then put them together, pair them up. So both of these go with the D group. So we'll just put these, fold that into the D group. And then both of these go with this one. So these are my C group. Now the nice thing about when you guys do this, you're going to have all your strips, all 6 or 12 of your strips sitting there, and so you're going to be able to do all of that labeling at the same time. This goes with C. I'll fold that into it so it doesn't get lost. I'm going to need my labels on it first. And that was actually, oh, I put that with the wrong group. That actually goes with the C group as well. And then this piece goes with the B group. And this one goes with my A group. Now, wasn't that simple? Those labels are valuable. So if you guys are making your own, you need to set up and build your labels. Okay, so this is going to go with my A group. Now I'm going to just take each one of these groups and I'm going to put it in a bag. And it doesn't matter which bag because all the paper is the same. If you labeled your bags, then you would want to find the right labels on it so that you knew what color groups you had. And that is one thing you're going to have to keep track of as you're going and building this, is keep, after you get each group done, make sure you do label that group, keep some of the tags, or just put the tags, you can put them right on your bag when you're done with your stacking and you pull them off your fabrics, because you do need to know where those pieces go when you put it up there, if you pre-design the colorway. All right, so we're going to take this group. Now we're saving all of these pieces because we need these to set up all of my papers. Okay, so I saved these from yesterday, and these are going here. So we're just going to set all of these aside. And Judelle, did you mention, you might want to mention that we're going to sell this kit.
So Mom is not going to make the one that she's doing here, but she is going to make a few pieces of it, and it's going to be cut out. So at some point here, that kit's going to be, this kit is going to be available for sale. How I'm going to make that happen, I'm not really sure, but she did remind me that, I'm going to switch over to me for a second. Hold on. I have all these little Star Baby kits, and we use them for a workshop. There's 11 of them here, and today we're going to do giveaways. We are going to choose 11 people from people who have told us where they're at and, you know, commented on this video, and I'll just use some sort of a random generator to get that information off of the number of comments we've received at the end. And then we're going to send these out. So these little Star Baby kits, or Star Baby patterns, have the instructions. So this is just one. So you can see that's only one star, wherever we're at here. And it's the star in, you know, you're making lots more for the Goodnight star. This
well,
is just
we basically have 6 of the stars. That's one.
Yeah. So here is what these look like. So the cool part about this stuff is we've already cut out the papers. So we cut them out so that the class would move faster, but see, the papers are already cut. So it'll save you a little bit of work. It's not a lot. I don't have kits or anything for them. So you'll have to buy your fabrics, but we're going to give away 11 of these little designs. So make sure you provide some comments, and then we will figure
a random way to figure out how to send them out.
Yeah. So anyway.
And we need your addresses and stuff too. We can't
I'm not going to do it until after we shut the video off. And then we'll pick people, and we'll send you little messages and put that information on there. So anyway, so make sure if you're watching to provide us with a bunch of comments. So
okay, I'm ready to go again.
All right, hold on just a bit. I'm going to switch back to Judy. Okay, we're on you.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you how I set up, how I got my colors set up on my sheets. So I'm just going to cut some strips here. I'm going to need 2 of each color group. And I'm not exactly sure which ones I'm going to use, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to cut 2. And when I'm all done, if I have extras or something, I don't care. Okay, so, because I have to have 2 of these for each one of my papers. I might even need to have 4. Well, actually, I think I do have to have 4 on some of them. So let's just go ahead and cut them. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up my fabric here, and I'm going to open up my strips right here, because we're going to sew these 2 at a time. And I'm going to look, this is the E group, and if I look, it says S3, okay? And then this piece right here, these are, say, S4. No, this is S2. Looked at it upside down there. So that's S2, so that's going to go on top of that strip.
Someone said, what ruler is Judy using?
This is a Creative Grids. This is 3 inches, and I use it for when I'm doing demos all the time. It's 18 inches long, but it works really, really good when you're working at a small space. You're not having to flip a big ruler around. And it's probably my #1 favorite ruler ever. And you can get them in 3 inch by 18, 3 inch by 12, 3 inch by 24. But they don't take up near as much space, and they're easier to work with when you're doing your cutting. And I think they even have some that might be 2.5 inches. But anyway, with Creative Grids. All right, so this is my, this is 6, this one is 8, this one is number 9, so 9 is going to go on the bottom of my stack, so I'm going to put it right here in the middle, and then I know that 8 goes on top of it. And now I have to find my fabric 7, which is right here. So this is going to be fabric 7, and I'm going to put my tag down there. So I'm stacking these in fabric order now. So I'll have from fabric 1 will end up at the top. All right, so you're going to have fabric 9 on the bottom and 1 at the top. And that tells you on your label. So now I'm looking for 6, which fabric 6 is this one. This puts everything in my sewing order. And now we are looking for fabric number 5. And now we want fabric number 4. And this is number 1. This is my S4. And this one is S3. And this one is S2. And this one is my S1. So I have everything in my stack sewing order now. Now I'm going to put them onto my sheets. And when you're looking at your sheets, you want to set it up to where fabric foundation sheet S1 is at the top. So now I have S1, S2, and S3 as far as the foundation sheets are concerned. And I can read my numbers right side up, okay? So it tells me here that my S1 fabric goes here, which is this color right here. And I have a couple of those. So we're going to grab a glue stick, and we're just going to put a piece right over that. And then we're going to come over here, and there's my fabric S1. Now I can just fold it back. My fabric S2 is a big dot. And my fabric S2 goes here. And I like to put them across ways, because if I put them this way, I have a tendency to want to put the strips under there when I sew. So I like to put them in the order that the strip goes. So when I'm looking at my papers, this is section 1, section 1, section 1, section 1. Where if you go this way, you have section 1, 2, and 3. Well, that's 3 different colors. That's why I like to put those, cut a long strip and put on there. It just saves the confusion when I'm picking up my papers. That's a pink, so that's my S3. And S3 here. And then we have my next one would be my S4, which is going to be that color right there. And I must have another one here. Where to go? Right here. Okay, so this is fabric S4 up here. Fabric S4. And then we have fabric S5. In my red dots. And where's my other one? And fabric number 6. The sound of that, I can hear them scraping the floor in there, and I'm like, what is that sound? It sounds like the show The Walking Dead.
It does a little.
It's like, where's that sound? This is fabric S7. And this goes here. And then we have S8, which is the dark purple. There's the other one right there. And then I have S9. Okay, so that's how you figure out where all your colors go. So now once we cut these, we're already stacked and ready to start sewing. So I'm going to just take this, get all my pieces back stacked on top each other. And before I move my fabrics, we're going to cut this. Now, if you guys have your other stacks, just go ahead and keep all of your little samples, because you'll use all of these up when you start going through your other bags. So I'm just going to throw those right there, because then I won't have to cut them again. So we're going to take our strips right now. Let's set this aside. And put some repositionable glue on the back of it. And if you don't want to, you don't have to, because this is a really easy cut. You can just lay it on there, and then you're going to cut. And yeah, I just cut through a whole bunch of my labels. Oh well. Didn't I tell you not to do that? I was moving them and I didn't move those two. All right. But they're already cut in the right order. And then I can just take this one, and this is what I mean. I really don't have to put the glue on it. Okay. Okay, so then I'm just going to take this, and we're going to restack these pieces. All right. I'm going to flip them both over because I want S1 on the top. So I'm going to stack both of these together, because we're going to strip piece both groups. Both sets are going to be strip pieced together. And if you just want to strip piece one to practice, then you wouldn't have to do what I'm doing here, which I probably should have left it alone, just for time-wise. Whoops. Don't do that.
Uh-oh.
Do you need to take the puppy out?
I'm not sure. I might have to run the puppy out real quick.
I can continue.
Are you okay?
All right.
Oops. No, I put my head right in the camera and then I bumped the camera. See? Chaos.
Can you see
everyone. Me? Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it was on that camera, so I think
we're
good.
All right, so I'm basically ready to do 2 of these. Now, this is one of the things that I think is really important, is you really should have some extra labels. Because if you're working with batiks, you won't know whether this is number 1 or this is number 1, okay? So you got to have some extra labels. And you're just going to take this, and I like to leave these labels on here in case I make a mistake. I know what color or what I need to do to fix it. And then I'm just going to write strip 1. So what this is telling me is that's my first strip. And then we're just going to put a paper clip on it. And that's all ready to start doing our strip piecing, okay? But I'm not going to do the double set. I'm actually going to work on that other one. And I'm going to take these pieces, make sure I keep my templates for my next group. And this is where I would come in here and I would cut everything apart, okay? So I'm going to just fold it up and put this group back in the bag, and we're going to work with the other group that I have set up because it's in singles. And keep track of your templates. Don't throw them away because you're going to need them for every single bag that you're doing there. Okay? So we're going to start right here, and I'm going to quickly cut out my papers, and I'm just going to do one set for you guys. We're going to get everything off of my table that I don't need. I don't need this ruler. Alright, so I'm just going to take and put a little bit of repositionable glue. And this does get on your board, but you can actually just take it and use Clorox wipes or rubbing alcohol, and it comes right off. It just eats up that glue, so you can clean up your table really well with it. But I like to do this because then I don't have to worry about it moving. Okay, so I have it all set up there, and now we're just going to go through, and I'm going to do all of my cuts, and I'm going to cut these out about 1/8 of an inch outside my strip. I don't want to cut them right on the line. And these are the foundation papers that we're working on right now, so about 1/8 of an inch. And that's not a 1/2 inch, that's not an inch, it's 1/8 of an inch. And the reason why is because your strips, if you get this too much length on there, you have a hard time with making your strips fit on the back side. Okay, so we have all of those cuts done. Oh, I missed these. Okay, so now we're going to just start here at the bottom.
Barbara Carney said, I love how organized everything is.
So do we.
The organization is probably the part that takes the longest of this quilt. Getting it all organized and all your strips in the right order.
Okay, I'm going to put one of those aside, and then we're going to keep that one. How are we doing on time?
It is 2:18 and class goes till 4,
So we're about halfway through.
Yeah, not quite, but yeah.
We're doing good time-wise. I'll move this down closer to me.
Chantel Shaunaboom said this, it works well for my OCD. Cheryl Kent says, it does take a lot of time, but I found that it's the most important step. Especially if you're going to put it down and come back to it in 2 weeks or a month or 6 months or...
All right, so now I told you about the Clorox wipes. So I do have a little bit of glue buildup and I want to get rid of that. So I'm just going to take, and we're going to take your Clorox wipes and we're going to clean that glue off the table.
I think any kind of wipes will work, right,
I think
Mom?
so.
Yeah.
Plain water doesn't work as well, but the wipes work really, really good. Now I have a nice clean table.
All disinfected too.
Yeah. I won't get COVID now, remember? Clorox wipes. We're going to cure all of that. All right. The very first video I did using Clorox wipes came out about 2 weeks before COVID. And then you couldn't buy them. All right, so I'm going to open up these. I have them already stacked in order. And I have all my labels down on this end. So I'm going to take my strips. Put one of them right here. The other one right here.
Lori Thomas said, friends got together to finish another Friends Glacier Star. The labeled bags made it a doable mission to finish for her family. So we get calls a lot from people who say, help, I have like these random papers and cut pieces and I don't know what they go to. And we actually can usually find them for them. Mostly because we're organized on this end too, so.
All right, and I'm going to throw this back because this has all my fabric numbers on it. And I'm just going to double check, but I'm pretty sure I have this in order. S1, S2, S3, I do. Okay. So remember how on the other one I had the two colors together? Well, just time-wise, I had enough to do two papers. So what you would do is you would stack both of your S1 papers together, both of S2 together, and S3 together. And 3 would be on the bottom, then 2, and then 2. And then you would be able to do this other sets where I have the two colors together. And now I can strip piece all 6 pieces, okay? I'm just going to do 1 for the video. So we're going to take this and this. And then we're going to take these strips and we're going to clip them right to the paper and put these back in my bag.
We got lots of people commenting that this is their first Quiltworx pattern. It's a good one to choose.
It is, and you have a really good video here to go back and watch the sorting and everything. So if you get confused, bring the video up. Have the video sitting there where you can watch it. So now I have S3, S2, and S1. And what that does is that gives me fabric. S1 is on this page. S2 is on this page, S3 is on this page, okay? And I can do all of these together because I have these fabrics stacked in that order. So when I look at my strips, I have S1, and then I'm going to put my S2 on the one underneath and the S3 on the one underneath that. And then when I come back here, this color, and then we have 5 and 6 is underneath there. So everything is stacked in my sewing order. So now we're going to grab our repositionable glue. We don't need this on our table. I like to get everything off my table that I'm not working with. And I'm going to leave the instructions out just because I want to kind of follow through the instructions with you guys. So before I started doing all the sorting, so all of those 6 bags that I had, that's what's here. It tells me right here what those fabric numbers are, but it also tells you on the paper. So if you read the paper and just match the label up to the paper, it's going to get you the same place. If you don't have the labels and you have that number somewhere else, then you're going to have to refer to it if you have it on a sheet alongside you. Okay, so then we get over here. This went through the cutting information on how to set it all up. This told you how to stack it from basically, if you were doing a whole bunch of rounds, you can stack all of your rounds for groups, and sometimes we do, or you can just do one group at a time. I'm teaching you how to work with one color group at a time because it's not as confusing to new students when we do it that way. I actually, if I was doing this, I would have had all of these stacked to where I could do all of my groups at the same time. And that's a little bit harder. You have to understand the process before you can set that up, okay? So all of the steps that I'm going to be doing here are written in your pattern, okay? So as you're reading through the steps and it's showing you how you're stacking your pieces, it's going to look, if you actually have your video there, it's going to match up with the instructions that go through. And the steps are always the same. So anytime we do a star element in any of our patterns, the process that we're showing you is basically the same. The only thing that might change is the order things are sewn together, the order of the fabric numbers, but the strip piecing process is the same, okay? All right, so I'm going to just set the instructions there, and we're going to take and put our fabrics on the top and set the papers over here, and then I'm going to get my repositionable glue, And I want to know where those lines are. Now, if you have a light table, you can actually trace the back and have those lines. It's really the only line that I really like to know is the first line. And the reason why I like to know the first line is so I don't get glue in section 2, because I don't want section 2. And if I accidentally turn the paper upside down, then I'm going to put glue under section 3, and that's a real problem, okay? Because now when you're trying to sew, that repositionable glue is going to stick to your table. So I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to show you. You know your templates right here? So if you accidentally go through this and do that, which I do it all the time, that's why I know how to fix it, then I just take my template and I lay it over there, and it covers all my repositionable glue until I'm ready to put the fabric under there. So I'm basically replacing that, and I'm covering that glue so I don't have the glue. And if you accidentally get it in another section, just grab some of your scrap paper and put it over that glue on the back so that you can continue sewing. Because what will happen is when you start sewing, if that glue hits your pressure foot, what you're going to end up with is it just stops sewing. It just starts sewing about 200 stitches in a half an inch, and you're like, oh, what's going on with my machine? Well, that's the repositionable glue. The fabric is sticking and the paper sticking to your foot, okay? And just pull your foot off and wipe it down with your Clorox wipe, and you're good to go, all right? So I didn't make that mistake today in my demo, so we don't have to put that piece there. So I just put it under number 1, and then I'm going to grab my number 1 fabric, which is on top, and I'm going to set that down there like that. And then I'm just going to move it over to the edge there. And then we're going to flip this one over, and I'm going to go ahead and fold this. And if you have those little Caterpillar light tables that are flat, you can do this right on those light tables, because the glue won't hurt the light table either. And then you don't know exactly where to line that up without having to fold that back. Okay, so we're going to position that one on there. So let me tell you where you're positioning. This is a 2.5-inch strip. I need the bottom of my paper to have fabric under it, and that fabric's has to go past the dashed line. And there's not much waste, so you got to look to make sure that you're getting that strip under the section. If you get that twisted, then it's not going to cover half of the pieces, all right? So we're
Nancy said right on the line on this cut, or 1/8 of an inch.
It's right on the line. You mean what I'm folding?
Well, okay, so Nancy, we might need a little bit more clarification, but you are going to put that fold template right on the line.
Actually, I'm putting the fold template on my dashed line right now, because okay, I don't want to get glue past that dashed line. So that's what I'm lining up. I'm using this instead of marking it with a light table.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Hopefully that answers your question.
Because I'm not going to cut or anything with that. I'm just getting that as a marker. So if you look, what I'm doing is trying to find this line right here.
So a lot of times in our instructions that you'll see something that says trace your dashed lines. She's folding on it instead of tracing it.
That is correct, what Judelle said. Okay, so now I know that I have to put my glue and keep it on that side of that.
There you go.
Because the glue's not going to hurt the back side of the fabric. It's on the inside of your quilt, and that's where we want it. Okay, and it will hold those pieces together. So now that puts fabric number 3 on the top. All right, so I'm going to move my strips out of the way, and now we're going to do the first set of trimming. Okay, so I'm going to pick up number 3, flip it over, and this is where you were wondering what line I put it on. This is line 1. Okay, it's the solid line, and it says line 1, and it has to be right on that line. Okay,
this one's important.
Yes.
Get it on the solid line.
I'm going to show you a couple little things. You can use a plastic template. We also have, we don't have these yet, but you can actually go down and get stuff like this at a hardware store and stuff. But we're going to one of these days make these, and these are made out of copper or brass, and they work great because they're thin, and I can take that and fold right on that line, and it doesn't move like my plastic templates have a tendency to move on me. Now I'm going to take my large rotary my big add-a-quarter ruler. Okay, if you're doing this process, you really need to get yourself an 18-inch add-a-quarter ruler. Even if you're in another country, try to find the 18-inch add-a-quarter rulers. Okay, and we're going to place those on there, and it fits right along the edge of my fold template. And see, I'm not trimming off very much. And you look at that and you go, well, why did you even trim it? Well, what's going to happen is if I don't trim this, when I add my next piece, the third piece is not going to cover because I don't have that much, I don't have a 1/4 of an inch extra fabric. So you must trim it. Now, some people like to glue that paper right on along the edge of the line, and then they don't have to trim, which that works, except that you still have to come back and line everything up. And I think it's easier to line up along the edge of the fabric than it is to line up against a fold, but that's my preference. You can do it either way. A lot of my CIs teach it the other way as well because it does save one step. My instructions aren't written to do it the other way, so I have to do it this way to follow those steps that we've set up in all of the instructions. So I have this, and now I have a 1/4 of an inch, and this is paper number 3, so I'm going to put it on the bottom. Now we're going to take the next paper, and this is foundation sheet S2, and I'm going to place this right on my line. Now fold my paper back, crease it so I get a nice fold, put my add-a-quarter ruler on, and again I'm going to trim just a sliver of that off, and it's about a 1/16 of an inch is what I'm trimming off there. And then I'm going to pick this piece up, I'm going to stack it on top. Then we're going to have to get paper number 1, so this is my foundation sheet number 1. Now, these actually, when you're just doing one group and all your colors are the same, it's not so important that you number your papers because the number's here. But let's say you were doing a quilt that had 3 or 4 rounds. You're going to have a lot of fabric number 1s, and so in that case, if I was going to do all of these at one time, I would have to have all of my fabric stacked up, which I can do a set here, a set here, a set here, a set here, and a set here without mixing them all up. But then I'm going to have to number my papers because I'd have to have my papers numbered from group 1 all the way to group 6. And that way you won't get your papers mixed up because you have numbers on them. And if you do mix them up, you just check your numbers as you go. And always make sure you're back in numerical order. And that one didn't hardly have any left over. Okay, so we have all 3 of my pieces. Now, if I open this up and look at my little strip set, look at it matches the top fabric that's sitting right here. Okay. Just so you guys know, I actually have an audience in here. I have a nephew, a grandnephew of mine. That's his picture's sitting right up there on my camera, and so I get to look at Johnny's picture. He sent a picture to us for graduation. His mom did, and he's sitting right in front of me, and it's easy to talk to him. So
someday we'll show you a picture of Johnny.
Okay, so I'm going to, this is my fabric number 4. It says S4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line that right up. That's my sew side. Right along that edge. I'm going to have fabric along this edge. And I have fabric along this edge. So we're sitting with about an inch of overhang on both sides. Okay? You don't want to line the paper up. You're not trying to line fabric up. What you're trying to do is center this chunk of paper with the fabric underneath. And we're going to slide that off to the edge. And then we're going to take the next piece and we're going to put this one on.
So Cheryl Kent asked, where did you say you could get the fold template? So the plastic fold templates, we just cut out of a piece of just template plastic. What you can buy template plastic, or you can just take another piece of plastic that's flat and use that. And then Anne asked, is the copper fold template about the same weight as a Dritz hem gauge? Do you know? I don't know how much a Dritz hem gauge weighs, but the copper templates are heavier for sure. We don't have them yet for sale. It is our goal to do that. We have run into some sourcing issues, pricing issues. They are significantly more expensive if we go that route than just getting a piece of plastic. But also they last a really long
lifetime.
So
yeah.
And you don't cut through them.
And we're going to do them in 3 sizes. All right. So let's go back to the paper piecing here. And so there's a couple things I want to show you. I'm ready to sew, but if I just pick this up and take it to the machine, it's going to move on me underneath the foot. These are pretty little, so they're pretty easy to handle. I just fold this back and I put glue.
Sandy says, Judy's not gluing that edge on strip 2. How is she going to get it to hold even? Well, guess what? She's gluing it now.
I glue them after I get them all stacked. So this is the way I like to do. I get them all in a stack like this, and then I just glue. But I want to show you a couple other things. And then I go to the bottom piece. So now I have them all glued. But the other thing is, some ladies have a hard time getting that to still go through their machine. So you can actually take this and you can open them up, and you can put a flower pin in there. All right. And I like to take this, and I'm going to flip it around if I do my flower pin and do it this way, because then I don't poke myself trying to pull the pin out going down the machine. Okay, maybe. So anyway, you can secure those with a flower pin if you need to, all right? I don't think I need to, but if you do, you can actually secure them with your flower pins because they're flat. So let's go to my sewing machine, and I don't have my chair, so we're going to do it standing up today. So how's the camera on the machine?
It's not yet.
Okay.
Now it's on the machine.
So I have number 3 on the top. So I'm going to take this to my machine. I want to set my stitch length at about a 2. I don't want it too tight, and I don't want it loose on there. okay? And if you get it too tight, then it shrinks up, the long strips will shrink the paper a lot more than what you want it to shrink it. So I like to leave it at about 2. If your stitch is too loose, when you go to cut along the edges and then you start turning back to put your stars together, you end up your stitches back off. And so anyway, you got to find a happy medium where it works. So we're going to start right here, and I'm sewing on line 1. And the more accurate you sew on line 1, the easier it's going to be to match these pieces. Okay, if you have a thread cutter, go ahead and cut those threads at this point. These are pretty big to leave them all attached, so I kind of like to cut and stack them as I go. Okay, so just so you know, I'm going to put my needle down. I just ran over a little chunk of glue, and now my paper's starting to wobble on me. So when I get done, I'm going to actually have to clean that off because it's on the back, and my paper's not tracking. And I must have just got a drip of glue under there. So I'm going to go like this. I'm going to quickly clean that off. If I was working with little tiny pieces, that wouldn't be a big deal. But working with a long strip like that, that becomes a big deal. Okay, so I got that. I'm just going to check that.
Someone mentioned that they also use these flimsy cutting mats from the dollar store, and they work pretty good for fold templates, and they're slightly thicker than a
they are.
piece of template plastic.
I've used those, yeah.
And also others. So there are some add-a-quarter rulers out there that have the edge bevel. You can use those as well. Some people have gotten very successful at using the beveled edge on the add-a-quarter ruler, but it's really, they're all options for you.
Okay.
And the brass ones, as far as the thickness in terms of the hem gauge, I think the brass is thinner than a hem gauge. I was trying to look up the actual thickness of those, but it just depends on thickness. I think the biggest thing on those is that you
need to switch to the iron.
Okay, hold on. I need to figure out my screens here. Okay.
All right. So we're going to go to the iron. And I have fabric or paper number 1 on the top. Okay. And it depends on the sequence that you do your sewing and stuff as to which paper is going to be on top. I'm actually going to flip this over because I want this side up when I go to my ironing board. Okay. And pull the pin out, and I have a starch pin here. This is an acorn starch, and it's a pin. And when I'm doing a lone star, I run this starch right along that seam line like that. Okay, and then I'll flip this, and I open that up with my fingers, and then I put my iron on it.
And we have those starch pens on the website too. Elise has been posting the links, so she'll probably do that one as well.
Okay. And then I'm going to stack this over here. Then we're going to take the next one. And this is kind of have a wrinkle on it because that's where there was a chunk of glue that got dropped on there. So if you have something and you have that wrinkle, just realize that once you pull the paper off, that wrinkle is going to come out. All right. So I'm not going to get really undone over it being there. And if I want to pull on it a little bit, I can actually pull on it. There we go. Kind of flatten it a little bit better. And as I'm pressing, I want to press towards fabric number 2. I don't want to press towards fabric number 1, because if I press towards fabric number 1, I end up with a little fold in there. And that fold will make it so you can't match your diamonds when you're sewing them together. So always press towards the piece you just sewed on, which is always going to be the highest number. So you're going to just take your hands and open that up, and then you're going to take your iron and press towards, that's actually my second fabric group. Okay. So now I'm going to look at this, and I believe I have fabric. I have S1 on the top here. And so if I trim everything, it's going to put it on the bottom over here. So I'm going to flip my papers and start with S3. And then we're going to start the whole trimming process again. And I'm just going to show you, see what that looks like. It's just 2 strips. So let's take this, and we're going to speed through this really fast. That puts number 3 on the bottom. This is number 2. This is number 3. Actually, that's number 1. Okay, so I have number 1, and I open it up, and it's this piece of fabric that goes underneath there. So let's just hurry up, get through this step so we can move on to assembly, trimming and assembly. I'm going to take the next one. And if you're not confident, just look. And a peek to check is always much easier than a seam ripper to rip. So it takes 2 seconds to peek and 10 minutes to rip. So most of us prefer the ripping part of it because we're too lazy to peek.
Someone said, what machine are you using?
I have a Bernina.
It's not a fancy Bernina.
No, it's just a little classroom Bernina. So we're going to start sewing again. So I'm going to just slip this up here. We're going to repeat the same thing. So you can see I'm not cutting these apart. All right, so let's hurry up and press. Okay. All right, so let's flip these over. There's some TRP lines on some of these. We want to sew those TRP lines because those are going to keep all of my blocks straight as I'm going, okay? So I have TRP lines on this sheet. I don't have any on S2, and I have some on the S3. So we're just going to take these, and we're quickly, before we cut them apart, there's no reason to do this after you cut it apart. Do your TRP lines now. And then I'm just going to roll it around. I'm going to grab the next one.
Are you resetting your seam size for those ones?
Yep, they're going to all come out just fine. I'm on a 2 anyway, which I normally use a 2 because I find when I go up to a 2.5, what did I do? Just break my thread. When I go up to a 2.5, what I find is on my softer cottons, it seems like my stitches come out all the time. They don't on my batiks, but when I'm working with a softer cotton, I have a tendency to lose half of my TRP lines in the process.
So for those of you who don't know what a TRP line is, it is a term that we use on our patterns for transition and registration point. So once you get to final assembly of your quilt, they give you match points so that everything matches up perfectly and easily. Another term we use is called a smart corner. And a smart corner is on your corners, we've gone in and actually engineered and drawn in your dog ears. So instead of guessing where your dog ears are going to be when you sew two pieces together, you actually trim those away. They're just things that we've built into our patterns over the years to make the patterns easier to assemble. And some people don't sew them. They feel like they can do the assembly without the TRP lines, but especially if you're first a beginner, the TRP lines are incredibly useful.
Yes, I sew them all. I just don't mess with trying to mark because it takes me longer to mark than it does to sew. Once you just accept what they're there for, and I pick them out as I'm building the quilt. So I don't wait till the whole quilt's done to pick everything out. I pick them out as I go. And so by the time my quilt's done, all my TRP lines are gone. All right, so I'm going to actually start the trimming. So we're going to trim the outside edges first on all 3 pieces. And my threads from my TRP lines are going to get all cut off when I do this. Actually, these won't. So I'll just go ahead and cut those threads. I don't like to leave the threads for the TRP lines on there because then they get sewn into the seam allowance. It makes it more difficult to pull them out.
Someone asked what a TRP line looks like. It's kind of hard to see in the video because the paper's...
Here's what it looks like on the front. I have a line sewn here, 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 and here. And if you read the paper, there are little dashed lines and it says TRP.
Maybe you can hold one of those pieces of paper up closer to that camera.
So if you look, it says TRP right there.
And they're lightly dashed lines that are marked on the paper. And then we just mark them and you sew them. Someone says, do you backstitch on the TRP?
No, don't backstitch.
Don't backstitch.
In fact, you don't even have to you cut the thread right down to the fabric, because then they come out really, really easy. Most of our instructions say to leave about 1/2 inch, but I have found that if I just clean it off, then it's really easy to pull them out with a seam ripper. And a stiletto works really well. Okay. So
someone said, you have thought of everything to make us newbies successful. That's what 25 years of teaching does.
Yep. And 25 years of wondering why I did something. So here's something else I'm going to tell you. So at this point, I don't need these fabrics here anymore. And I like to remove them, because if I don't, I end up sewing them into my quilt. So just get rid of them at this point. And it's easier to pull them off now than it is to pick out the quilt and pull them out of it. So now you have 2 lines here, okay? Let's go ahead and I'm going to finish trimming first. And then we'll come back to that part of it. And this trimming, you want to pay attention and make sure you don't slip. So if you have a hard time holding on to stuff, just slow down. I have a Creative Grids ruler, and it sticks really well to my paper, so I don't have to worry so much about it slipping, unless I'm talking too much. So I'm going to trim that smart corner and this smart corner.
So someone asked again, the smart corner ruler is called the deluxe corner trimmer ruler?
Yeah, and so the deluxe corner, if you look at this, can you see how that's kind of got 2 trim sides? Mm-hmm. That's what your deluxe corner ruler will do, and it's set up for all your basics, your standard angles, like a 45 degree, 60 degree, a 22 degree. So it's really a cool ruler. I use it all the time, especially when I'm working with the Lone Stars quilts.
But on our papers, we
add them.
We add them in there so you can trim them. But sometimes it's really nice just to have a ruler to trim with anyway, because it just holds everything in place so you don't slip accidentally. And just so everybody knows, our class is intended to go till 4 p.m. today. If we run a little bit long, we might, and we'll just keep recording until we're done. And if you can't stay that long, you can just come back and watch the end of it later. But these are designed to make sure you get what you need. And if we can't get it, if we talk too much about other stuff, sometimes we run a little bit over.
Okay, so let's get all this junk off my table here. All right, so I have S1, this is S2, and this is S3. Okay, I'm not gonna cut up the whole thing. I'm just gonna cut up enough to show you how to make that star and to match. So I'm gonna just cut 2 pieces off of each one. I probably won't have to use the 2, but I'm gonna just take this. And if I look at my pieces, this tells me that there's 3 lines in here.
You might want to hold that up again just so they can see them a little closer.
Okay, on your papers, there's 3 lines there. And in between there, the center line, it says part 2, cut line 3. This one says part 2, cut line 2. This one says part 2, cut line 1. You have to cut on that center line, okay? Just slow down and make sure you cut on the center line. I don't think I've ever taught a class that I haven't had a student cut on the wrong line. And I have done it myself. But remember all of that fabric that we stuffed back in, the leftover pieces? If you make that mistake, you have those pieces that you can rebuild that one section. So pay attention and don't do it on all. Most people do it like once and then they're like, oh, I gotta watch at what I'm doing. So make sure you can see where it says, and you want to be on the center line there. And I'm going to place that right on that ruler, and I'm going to make sure my ruler does not slip. And then I'm going to come to this one, and I'm going to do on the center line, and I'm cutting all of my stars apart. Okay.
Someone asked, what brand of small scissors are you using to trim the threads?
Ginger. And they're the curved, so they have a curve in them. Okay, so it's like the ones that they use for applique and machine quilting. They just have this little curve in them. So when you cut, you can get right down to your fabric and you don't end up snipping your fabric.
And I believe we have those on our website also for sale.
And there's more brands than just Ginger. There's several different companies that make them. And so just find something you're just with a curve in it and you'll be happy with what you have. Okay, so we're on the foundation sheet 2. I'm doing my first cut line. And now I'm going to do my second cut line. And I'm going to get rid of this fabric before I forget and stack that over there. And what I'm cutting here off the end are my smart corners. And it's worth the time to do it.
If a ruler's on a stock or something on our website, we probably have more coming in. The only thing I know that is on back order right now that is not coming in as soon as we would like is the repositionable glue. But Cindy says our order for that should be coming in soon. So, but we'll try and get some more in stock. And you can find them other places too. A lot of our certified quilt shops for sure carry all of the tools that Quiltworx recommends in our paper piecing patterns because they have a lot of Quiltworx customers. And a lot of quilt shops carry that, and just in general carry the Marty Michelle ruler as well.
Tell them how to find our certified shops.
I can, yeah, so if you want to know who's certified as a shop, if you go to our website at the top, it says certified shops. You can also see certified instructors there. And then you can click on a list and you can go see those locations. We have them actually worldwide at this point. So there's Canada, Europe, Australia, and I believe there's a shop in New Zealand and then in the US as well. So you can find people in lots of locations. And if they don't have exactly the product that we recommend, they carry similar products that are available more readily in their locations. So,
okay, so we're back to me. All right, so I like to stack them this way because it has my numbers on them, okay? Because I can stack them like 7 different ways from the front side, wrong. But I can only stack them one way right on the back side, okay? So you want S1 closest to you, S2, and then S3, okay? And then I can actually just take each one, and if you look at the pictures in your pattern, it shows you exactly how you're supposed to stack them. Okay, so it has row 1, row 2, row 3. Right here is your stacking information. Okay, so we're going to take this and we're going to flip this over just like that. And then it puts all of my colors in order. Now we have our first star. So see how I match fabrics, match fabrics, match fabric. And then I have my 2 fabrics there and my center, which is exactly what you see here on the pieces that we're building. And I believe I don't know which one I have here, but I have one of them. So
you have this one right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Well, if I do, I got a wrong color there.
No, it's all right.
Because I have that color. I wonder if that's labeled wrong. See? Or I might have built the one on the cover sheet wrong. Who knows? But anyway, I have this one. So, where it's going. All right. So, we're going to take this piece and we're going to move this one and this one are going to go right here. Okay. And I'm going to match up my 2 smart corners there. And I'm going to take this piece right here.
What I'm guessing, Mom, looking at that quilt, is that you used the wrong strip on the cover sheet quilt. Because that color that you have doesn't show up there. So
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. But
so she used the wrong strip color on her cover sheet quilt. She didn't follow the instructions.
I told you I don't follow instructions.
It's okay.
All right. So I have them glued right here. And I'm not going to do the second one. I just want to do one to start out with to explain what I'm doing here. So I'm going to show you 2 processes. One's going to be used which follows the instructions in your pattern. And then the second process I'm going to use is where you pull all the paper off, because I do have people out there that are advanced, but it'll be really hard for most of you to see what I'm doing when I do the second technique. But this one's really easy to see what you're doing. So you want to find the long glass skinny pins, or you can find the flower pins, the real thin flower pins that come in a package, okay? But it has to be a thin pin. And you're going to take this, and I have S2 on the top, which if you look at your instructions, it tells you which one goes on top. And I'm going to place this, and I'm going to put it in my intersection, and I call it an X intersection. And I want that pin to go right in that intersection. And then I'm going to find that same location underneath, and if I miss it, I'm going to make sure it goes on. And now I'm in the intersection on the top and on the bottom, and I can see exactly where those are supposed to be. And remember when we were talking about the pressing, where I said you have to press it out, because if you have a little fold in there, then that fold's going to go past where your intersection is, and that will be why it's not going to match. I'm going to tell you right now, you have to give yourself some room to get good at this, all right? And don't stress out if you have a few pieces that don't match, because nobody's ever going to see it with your quilts. It's fine, okay? If it's really bad, you can pull it out, but when I pull something out, I'll only pull out like an inch or so to work with. So I'm going to find another glass pin here, and I'm going to put it right on that intersection, and then going to move down 1/4 inch and make sure I hit it there. Now again, if you have a light table, you can see exactly, if you have this over your light table, one of those Caterpillar light tables, you can actually see through the paper and see where that intersection is when you're pinning these together. All right, so now I have both of these, and they're just like that. I have my pins through, and I'm going to push that pin all the way down, and then I'm just going to fold it and attach it down below. But I don't want to just hook it right here, or it pushes the fabric underneath off. And so I'm just going to hook it way down there just a little bit. So like I've almost got 1.5 inches between where I hooked that. And you can even see how that pushed that off, because now that's not a match. Don't worry about that. We're going to fix that in the process as we go. So now the instructions tell you, after you get that pinned, to remove the paper from the strip number 1. So now we're going to just come back here and we're going to remove this piece of paper. Your feed dogs on your machines were not designed to sew through 2 layers of paper. They really weren't designed to feed paper in general. And so you don't want to have the paper on the bottom. The only time I ever leave paper on the bottom against the feed dogs is if I'm doing a really tiny small curve. All right. Otherwise, you get rid of the paper underneath. If you want that line to sew on, remove the paper underneath as you're sewing, and then use the line on the top. And then you can continue to graduate as you're assembling your pieces. Okay, so now I have that like that. Now I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to unhook it, and we're going to go to the machine, and I'm going to actually sew right on the line of my second piece. Okay, so I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to rotate that pin back so that the point of the pin is poking into the machine. Because when I do that, remember how the fabric I told you was moved underneath it? It wasn't along the edge. Well, by rolling my pin around, it actually pulls the bottom fabric right out to the edge of the paper. And then I'm going to sew, and I want to sew right on the line. And right before I get to the pin, I pull it out. And then I go over. And now I'm going to take this pin and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to roll that out. And you can kind of gauge how much you want to spin that pin, because sometimes you might not want to spin it as much as the whole distance. So now we're gonna take that, and then you're gonna open it up, and you're gonna look at your seams, and you go, "Nice job, Judy. Perfect."
Hold on just a minute. I have to flip to the... Okay, so do that again. Nice job,
So
Judy.
Nice job, Judy. See how that point is just right on? And this one is right on. Okay, so now I'm going to go to my iron, and I'm going to grab my starch pen, and I'm going to run it right down that seam. Okay, and I'm going to press towards fabric strip number 1. Okay, so that would be the section 1. The first piece of paper that we pulled the fabric off is the way I'm pressing. Okay, and we have just a really nice flat, but if I turn it this way, so see, I press towards the fabric that doesn't have paper, the strip that doesn't have paper, and number 2 still has my paper under it. So now I'm going to grab my number 3 strip. I'm going to flip it over here. We're going to grab number 3 strip, okay, and we're going to do the same thing over again. So we're going to take my glue pen, and I'm going to glue my smart corners. Okay. Notice that I didn't glue anywhere else in there, all right, because I prefer the pins These are tiny enough that if you actually did glue, in fact, let's just do it, that it probably, you'd have it close enough to where you would be really happy with it. Okay? And then you wouldn't have to deal with the pinning. All right? Now, as you get into longer lone stars and the bigger the diamond, the less chance that you're going to be able to do that gluing along the edges to get it to come out perfect, right? But let's just do it and see what happens. Now I'm just going to sew. You know what I did wrong, and I'm like, this isn't working? I didn't remove my paper underneath, and so it's not feeding my fabric. And I know I don't have a match. I'm like, why is that not feeding? It's because I didn't read my directions, and I forgot what I was talking about. But it does tell you to remove the paper. And I'm sure I probably have a few CIs out there that going, Judy forgot to remove the paper.
Yeah, well, someone just commented, would have never thought to remove the bottom paper, but it makes so much sense to remove it. Thanks for the tip. Then she didn't follow her own tip.
Yeah. So, let's see. I hit it on that one, so I think I'm going to be okay on it. All right. But you need to get that paper off because then it'll feed and you won't see your paper buckling underneath the pressure foot. It just sews really smoothly for you. And then you can also fill all right. And that one hit. All right. So let's go press that piece. Okay, so at this point, I like to leave the paper on the last piece because then I can write what the group number is and where it goes in the pattern. So we're actually working with the F group right here. So I would actually just come in here and I'd write group F. Just in case I have all of them laying out somewhere and I misplace a piece, then I still have that information on there that tells me where it's at. So just label on the back of that. Okay, so now let's go ahead. This is the way I do it. I actually take these. We're going to take this piece, goes on there like that. And I'm going to run a little bit of glue along, and I don't glue where I don't glue over the seam. So my glue stays in between. And then I'm going to take this, match it here, push the glue together along that edge, okay? And once I get that done, I'm going to remove the paper from both pieces. And I can leave it on the second piece, but I don't use the lines to sew. I have a 1/4 inch foot and it works really, really good. I should have pulled this off before I glued it.
Someone asked what width of the ruler. What's the width of your ruler? I think it's the 2.5 inch, right?
For what?
Ruler, right?
What ruler?
Your cutting ruler.
This?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that one's a 3 inch. I don't have the 2.5, but they make a 2.5 inch. Okay, so one of the things that happens when you do it this way is now I don't have my numbers on there, okay? So, but I do know that this is number 1, that this is my number 1 piece. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find what we call a stiletto. And what I'm looking for is where this seam comes in right here. I can actually feel with my finger exactly where that is, and I can actually draw an X basically there, and I just do it with my stiletto. And then I can find where those two intersections come together right there. And I do this all at my machine. So, but what I want to do is I'm going to flip it over to where I have number 1 on the top, because then I can hold that where the intersection, those two intersections come together right there. And I have this seam coming here and this seam coming here, and I can feel where that intersection is with my stiletto. So I just go to my machine, I start sewing. After I get about halfway through, then I come in here and I figure out, well, where's that at? And I can just poke a little hole right in there. And I have a 1/4 inch foot in here, and it has an open toe. It's open, so I can actually run my stiletto right into that opening, and I can hold that. And then I just pull it out, and I can hit it right where it needs to match. Then we just let the feed dogs pull it through. And when I get about an inch away, probably more like 1.5 inches, I'm going to find the next place. And I can just run my stiletto right along that line, and I can match that up. And if you don't have an open toe, you can just poke a hole, and you'll know exactly where your needle needs to hit. When I do it this way, I don't have to do any pinning. I can actually just stack all of the pieces and run them all through at the same time. But I like to flip it up so that I've always got the lowest number on the top. And you have to be a little careful when you do that, because when you come back to your stacks, you've got to remember which one is number 1. So when you're doing it, go ahead and on your sheets, just take and tear a little tiny chunk of this and put it right there, and you can leave it glued on to your number 1 there to keep that, to make sure you don't lose. You need to know what your number 1 point is. So,
because otherwise you could sew onto the wrong edge.
Yeah, you can flip them over and sew them on the wrong edge. So we're still sewing in the right direction. My seams came out perfect, so we're going to go to the ironing board. And I'm going to press that open, finger press it. And when I said my seams came out perfect, I was wrong. Now that I'm pressing, I can tell that this one's off just a touch. Okay, so when you're looking at this, if you have a seam that's not matching, if the seam's too big, you're going to have a little bit of a space in between. You'll be able to see this color and this color in between. So my seam allowance is just a needle's width too big right here. If you have an open space between this color and this color, then it means your seam allowance is too small. And you can just go in there and tuck that in. So to fix this, the way I would actually what I'd do is I'd come in and just do a smaller seam allowance on the inside, and then I'll come back and pick out the threads in between, all right? And that will make it perfect for me. So I'm just going to do that really quick while I'm thinking about it. And we're just going to feather that. And I usually will cross over my seam just a couple times to make sure that when I pick it out, my threads are buried at both ends. And then when I get right where I need to go across it, I'm going to be on the inside because my seam allowance was too big. And so I just made it smaller. And then I got that stitch tied in. And now I can grab a seam ripper and I can break the stitch right there where it just in the process of showing you how to use the stiletto, I twisted the fabric right there. So I'm going to go like that, pull it out back here. Now when I open it up, now I have a match. Okay, and I just need to back my threads off a little bit more. So this is the kind of quilt that when you're stitching something like this, I like to go through and do a stack of them, and then I go back and I look at them and I decide which ones, if I want to fix any of them, I just throw the ones that I want to fix off to the side, and then I sit down and I fix them before I put it away. I don't save it to the whole end because then it becomes too overwhelming to fix.
Someone said, I got two things. Is the foot you use a 37, 57, or 97?
Yes.
Yes, which one?
It's a 37.
There's 3 options, and you said yes.
Oh, 37.
Okay. And then
it doesn't have the bar on it. It's just the 37.
And then another lady said, your paper removes so much easier than mine does. So maybe you can talk about why.
Just even when she's using newsprint?
Yeah, but I'm guessing, well, I'm assuming that she's using newsprint, but I would say it probably has to do with stitch length or thread.
No, I would think the reason why she's thinking it moves is because I don't have a lot of seams crossing over each other with this pattern. Where if I was doing something with a lot of spikes, then I have the papers tied in a lot more. But the other thing you have to realize is your newsprint does have a grain line. So as you're tearing across the grain line, it tears better. When you're diagonally, it doesn't tear hardly at all. But it's like fabric. It really has a grain line. And so depending on how the pieces are put on the newsprint, if the lines are slanted and stuff, sometimes those papers are going to come off really easy, and then sometimes you're just going to have a lot of little shreds on there.
But it could also be sewing stitch.
It could be your stitch length, because if your stitch length is too big, then you're going to be able to see all your stitches as you're going. Okay.
And it's not going to perforate the paper as much.
And if it's a really tight stitch, then the paper's definitely going to come off. But I use a size. On this one, I'm doing this with a 2 because of the weight of the fabric. So
and then also it could be theoretically what size thread you're using.
Huh?
It could be thread size.
Yeah, I pressed it in the wrong direction. I need to repress it.
And then it could also be
practice.
There was another thing I was thinking of and now I forgot. Someone said, do you press with steam?
I use steam. I just pressed it in the wrong direction because I didn't have the paper under it, so I'm just repressing now. I do press with steam. You don't want to steam too much on your paper, but I do use a lot of steam. Okay.
Oh, needle size, that was the other thing.
Oh yeah, your needle size. But I use a really small needle, but if the bigger the needle, the bigger the hole. But I use the small needle because I don't like the sound of the big ones. Don't use a 90. Stay with either a 70 or an 80 for the needle size. A 60 is too small. So the other thing is I'll show you right now another trick is when you're removing your paper, if you'll take a fold template, a plastic fold template, and you fold this back and you just crease the lines. Even if you can't fold the paper back and crease the line, you start with the very last number, so it should fold back for you all the time if you work from the largest number back to section 1, okay? But if you'll fold that back and just run your finger across there, and then you go to start tearing, and it just tears off as one big long piece. So the template's really nice for that. And then if you actually just have a stiletto, you can come in here and see how I just put it underneath the paper right there, and I pulled that down. So that pulled all of that, and I don't have a bunch of paper staying here. Then I can lay that down and crease it, and then I just start at the bottom and tear, get it started tearing into the paper, and it comes off as one piece. Now, that's not always going to happen if you have something like in our technique of the months where we have, you know, 20 spikes in a block. It's just, they're just hard to pull. So you just sit down, put a table in front of you, get a fold template, and work your way through them. Okay. So we have one more piece to put on here, and I'm going to quickly sew that on. And then I'm going to show you how to set these up.
Also, if you put too much glue on it and then you press it with the glue, it also makes the paper harder to remove in general.
Yes, it does.
So I've found that on my first piece, if I always forget, because I don't do this as often as she does, but I'll go to I'll sew it, and then I'll go press it, and then that last piece doesn't come off, or that first section doesn't come off as well, and I leave a lot of paper residue. So if before you do that, you go and you loosen that paper for section 1 before you press it, then it comes off better. And it's written into the instructions to do that, but a lot of times we don't read every single step unless we're starting it and doing it our first time. So if you loosen that first piece, that makes a big difference.
I'm hurrying a little bit, so it's probably a little wobbly on me. All right, so now we're going to go back and talk about the instructions, but there's our stars, okay? And the way you need to follow the assembly instructions, because you have to sew your pieces onto these before, and you actually have your 2 background pieces. So let me grab those background pieces. What time is it, Judy?
It is 3:36. So you got about 30 minutes, just a little bit less than that.
So when you guys are building this, realize that you're going to be building, so I'm going to have 1 block that's built out of the white fabric and 2 blocks that's built out of the black fabric.
2 out of the white and 2
out of the black.
2
out, because I forget this one. So you're going to be doing 2 and 2. So I'm going to grab the black fabric. I think, we'll see if I have that cut, just so you understand. And the other thing you need to remember is the template is the right side of the fabric. So if you're using a batik and you flip it over, then you just turned it in the left piece into a right piece and the right piece into the left. So leave the template on it as you're using it. And if I look at my instructions, this tells me that this piece goes here, and I want a B2L template on this piece, okay? And I didn't sew this whole bundle together, so I'm just going to show you another way that you can mark those. So you can come in here, you need a straight pair of scissors, and you can cut the TRP line on your paper. Not the fabric, just cut the TRP line on your paper. And so I'm just going to cut in there just a little bit, and I'm going to, and you can mark the front side when you cut it, then you can mark the front side right there. And I'm going to mark the front side on this because I didn't sew the whole bundle. And then I'm going to do this. And then the other thing you can do is when you, after you cut it, is you can fold it right on that cut, crease the fabric, and then mark the back side of it. Okay? So now I have it marked on both sides. And what this is telling me is this template piece goes right here. Okay. And then this piece right here is supposed to be a B1L, and that's this piece. There's no TRP lines on this one, so I can just pull it out and place it in here just like that. All right. And then this pile would be the same thing. So I'm not going to do a black one here. I'm just going to do the white one. Now I'm going to take this and we're going to flip this over. And my smart corners are going to match. And I'm going to pull the paper off before I go any further with it. So now we're going to match this. So if I just start sewing in down here, it's going to stretch on me because I'm sewing on this particular piece, I'm sewing two pieces of bias together. Most of the time when you're putting your diamond, that's because I'm adding it to here, but when you're putting a diamond together, you're normally going to have the bias edge up against the straight of the grain edge, the way it mathematically comes out that way, okay? On this, I'm putting it towards the background, and this is the straight of the grain. So I do have, this is bias here, and this one is straight of the grain. So my bottom piece shouldn't stretch too much. So I'm just going to put the glue along that edge. And I want to match my smart corner here, and then I'm going to match it here. And then the rest of it, even if it might seem like it's too big, you're going to make it fit. Because if you want your quilts to square up, you need to match at both ends. And if there's TRP lines in there, you match at the TRP lines, and then you actually make everything else fit, all right? Your puppy woke up. You might want to run him outside. We have a new puppy. We'll show him in a bit, but I think she better take him outside. 3 hours is a long time for a puppy. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more little thing here. Are we on this machine? Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the machine.
All right. I'm going to fold this back, and if I fold that seam back, I have a dog ear, and I'm going to clean off those dog ears as I'm sewing these onto my big background pieces, because that reduces my bulk.
Someone said, can we see the puppy? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but we're going to take him potty first.
I got to switch the screen back, though.
Yep.
And then you'll have to wait for me to come back if you want to go to the machine. So I'm going to run him out to go potty real quick. Come on, Matt.
All right. So, this is where you're pressing. If I'm looking at my pressing instructions as I'm doing this, it's going to tell me which way to press. And this one actually says to press in, okay? So basically what this is going to do is this is going to fold, and it's going to be my heavy seam on this side, but now I won't have to worry about anything, any shadow here. However, when I do the next one, this is set up, Bradley's got this set up for somewhat opposing seams, okay? You guys are going to have to look at that and decide which way you want to press. But I would probably try to figure out how to get one of the pieces pressed in and one out. So I would follow his instructions as you're building the block. And then when you start putting the big blocks together, that's where you're going to find that some of your opposing seams aren't going to end up opposing, they're going to end up stacked. And so you might want to clip them a little bit. And it's because you're offsetting your stars. So like you have a half a star there, then you have a full star. And so it's those half stars that are causing these not to come in opposing on the big rows. So just don't worry about it. Get your blocks together, and then when you start sewing the whole thing up, that's when you're going to decide if you're going to clip your seams for opposing or if you're going to work with a stacked seam. So I'm actually, because I'm working with Tulip Pinks here, I'm going to actually leave my seams pressed into the white because it's a heavier fabric, and I just feel like it's going to lay flatter for me. Where if I was working with a batik, I would definitely have this seam pressed that direction because batiks are a lot lighter weight. If I was working with cape, I would have it pressed the other way. So you have to make those decisions based upon the fabrics that you're going to do. No matter what, I'm going to have some of them pressed in and some of them pressed out. But so let's just go ahead and press this. We'll follow instructions for you guys. It tells me to press that, and I'm going to use my starch pin because that's going to make that press in the way Bradley has it set up.
You're probably not on the screen.
Huh? That's fine. You didn't see me press, but that's fine. Okay, so I followed the instructions, and I actually pressed into my block on that one. Now this piece comes in right here, and I'm going to sew this, and I'm going to put these pieces on. And as long as you don't get your left and right pieces mixed up, these smart corners are going to work. If you get them mixed up, that's where the other little double smart corner will come in really handy for you. So I'm going to match my smart corner there again. And then I'm going to match this up here. And then we're going to come in. We're going to put some glue along that edge. Okay. And then I'm just going to pull that back and get that to line up the way it wants. But even if it's not perfectly straight in there, don't worry about it, because what's important is that it lays flat. That's what you want, is you want it to look flat. And if it doesn't lay perfectly flat, then take it to the iron at this point and steam it. And any excess bias, if it's been stretched, once you steam it, it's going to come out looking perfectly flat. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to stitch my line, sew line. All right, so I'm gonna go press really quick, just flat, and then I'm gonna bring it back. So I haven't pressed the seam the way it tells me to press yet, because this is a trick that I use when I'm working with black and white quilts a lot. After I get through sewing the seam, I'll come back and I'll steam it, and then I'll lay my ruler down and I'll lay the 1/4 inch line just inside the stitch line. So I'm on that side of the stitch line, and I'm going to clean all of those threads off. And I'm just going to do a really tiny, tiny trim. So I just got rid of all of those excess threads. And now I can go press, and then I'm not going to touch this until I'm ready to finish the final. Because as you're working with the cottons, well, it's Tula Pink, but if you guys work with Tula Pink, you know that you're going to end up with a lot of frayed edges as you're building this. And I like to clean that off as I finish that block. All right. So remember, you're going to have 2 of these are going to have, 2 of your star groups are going to have your white pieces. So basically, when I look at this, I have 4, because I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 white, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the black. So as you're setting it up, you're going to have black, white on there, right? I'm going to tell you that we're basically to the end of the video. All right, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask some questions. I'm going to clean this up, and then we'll show you our puppy. We'll put him up here once I get the fabric out of the way. Okay?
Someone said, I've heard batiks bleed when washed. What do you use to stop the bleed if you do not pre-wash?
Some batiks do bleed. So
some cottons bleed. Actually, we've had cottons that bleed too.
Cottons bleed. So the reality, if you're worried about your fabrics bleeding, the only thing you can do is do your pre-wash. And you can get products out there. We have one that's called Retain. And you can wash them in there. But the reality of those products is once you throw them back in the wash the second time, you're washing that product out. All right. You can also get stuff that sets it in there, but some of those products are heat sensitive, so you have to read what's on the label of what you're working with. I would say if you're worried about it, your best option is to wash your fabrics and watch the water and make sure there's no dye in there. Okay, you don't have to wash it 100 times. With batiks, normally if you just rinse them, then all of that dye is going to come off pretty much in that first rinse, because it's just the excess dye that's sitting on the top. If you have a piece that just continues to run and run and run, no matter how many times you run it through, then just throw it away, because it's going to continue to run until the life of the quilt, okay? Personally, I don't pre-wash, but I'm in the business of creating product, and all of that pre-washing is just too much time for me. So our quilts won't even see the wash machine until we throw them over the beds into their our training center or our retreat center. So some of those quilts we throw in there, and we do have to wash them on occasion. Very seldom, if it's a batik, I just work it and keep rinsing it until the color stops running on it and say it is what it is. But if you guys are making a show quilt and you really don't want this to happen, then you're going to have to do your pre-washing, and you're going to have to read your products, because every country, every state, every quilt shop has a different product out there, and you're just going to have to study on it. Okay?
Someone else said, can you hold up the piece that you completed to the wall and show us where it goes in the placement?
Oh, yeah. On the block that I put in wrong in my quilt, but it actually goes here. I mixed the fabrics up on a couple of my blocks.
Either she did that, or when we ordered fabric, we ordered
the wrong color
wrong one. I don't know, but either way,
it's still going to look the same when you're done. Yeah. But that's where it would go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Any other questions from anyone? Lots of comments. Enjoyed the class. Fantastic class. I learned so much today. Irene Watson says she has a new grate due January 5th. Would love the baby moon star for him. Let's see. Any other questions? We can certainly show you the puppy.
Yeah, and remember, watch, if you guys are interested in buying the sample that I'm working on, you better be somebody that can pick it up and just move forward with it without a lot of problems, because it's already organized at different stages. But just send us a message, and then we'll go from there and see what we can find.
Yeah, so if you are interested in this sample that she was working on, send me an email at Judel, Judel, at Quiltworx.com. The video will be available later. As soon as we get done with this, it'll just post to Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, and it'll probably be January before I get this reorganized, because I have so much. I haven't slept for almost 36 hours right now. So you guys, I am busy. So give me till January to get this stuff reorganized in bags if you guys decide you want it.
All right, people are requesting the puppy. And also, I'm going to draw for those 11 star babies after we're all said and done here, but I won't do that on video. I'll do that afterwards.
This is our puppy.
He was so well behaved.
Yeah, he slept the whole time, didn't ya? Are you going to get up and look at him?
That's Maverick. Maverick is a golden mountain dog, so he's a golden retriever crossed with a Bernese mountain dog.
So he's going to be big.
He's 11 weeks, almost 12 weeks old, and he's going to be a big dog, probably 90 plus pounds. If you look at his paws.
He's bigger than my youngest grandnephew, who is going to turn 2.
Yeah, he had over Thanksgiving, my cousin came, and all Maverick and Carver wanted to do was play with each other, but we couldn't let them because everybody constantly was getting hurt. So I'll post a picture of them though, because we did take some cute pictures with lots of bribery with food. And anyway, but yeah, he was super well behaved. You guys didn't even know he was there the whole time until he had to get up. But
But he is all puppy.
Yes, he is for sure. Yeah, yep. Someone said he's grown since the last video. That is true. He is growing fast.
Yeah, Judelle thought she was going to take him on the plane, but by the time she got home from Colorado, he was already too big to put on the plane.
Yeah. So we were thinking of taking him to Arizona for Christmas, but my oldest son is going to come home and take care of him. So
we're done.
You're done?
All right.
All right.
We'll talk to you guys.